So my father unalived himself when I was 13 years old. I believe he was around 50 plus, 55, around that age when he took his own life. So I feel like I should have a little bit more experience in that regard when talking about or speaking about depression. One of the biggest motivators for me to understand and learn psychology was due to that fact of my history. It sort of haunted me for a very long time since I was 13 that I would go down or follow the same path as my father did. So it was a big motivator for me to try and understand that aspect within myself as a sort of way of trying to prevent that from happening. What Jungian psychology has provided me has actually provided way more than I could have ever have thought. It has given me something so much more than I had anticipated. I wasn't actually expecting anything, and psychology was not something that I sought after. It sort of sought after me in a way, like a calling. It was, in hindsight, almost an inevitable fact of my life that I would dive into psychology. It sort of followed me around my whole life. I mean, just starting from my father's death when I was 13, but even before that, I was explaining to one of my friends, and we were talking about nihilism and having existential crisis and fatal depression. And I had told him that, as far as I can remember, I think I was around 6, 7, or 8, around that age, that I had suffered from an existential crisis, meaning that I remember I would lie in bed at night absolutely terrified, and I wouldn't be able to sleep. I would have to coerce myself to sleep, or I would go to my sister's room because I just didn't want to be alone. And I remember that I would lie in bed at night just thinking about death. I would just think about death all the time. Like, I just thought, like, what is gonna happen after this? What is the point of all of this? I never thought that was a strange thing until my friend said that was weird, which now, yeah, it seems a bit weird to have those kind of thoughts at such a young age. And what I understood when I learned psychology, particularly Jungian psychology, and this is really important for everyone to understand, is that one factor of psychology that is not really well known, although I think it's starting to become ubiquitous knowledge, is that in Jungian terms, it's called the unlived life of the parents. In, I would say, modern nomenclature, you would probably say it's generational trauma in modern psychology, I believe. What that ultimately means is that whatever the parents don't heal in themselves, psychologically speaking, they will pass on to the children. And so I believe that that's probably what had happened to me and my siblings in regards to our psychological impairment or underdevelopment, is that we were suffering that which was not healed by our parents, particularly speaking of my father. So I know that doesn't sound like much to most people, but to me, that was an enlightenment because it explained a lot, that I was not entirely responsible for these feelings, for this depression that was that I was suffering at the time, and that a lot can be attributed to the external factors or the hereditary factors. Although that's not the complete picture. There are aspects of the depression that may have been my own. I think almost everyone has an identity crisis as they're growing up, especially in their teens, which is why we sort of fall into that. And there's a lot of hormonal changes as well as physiological changes that we're going through, which ultimately means there's a lot of psychological changes that we're going through, like puberty, reaching 25 as well. There's another change that goes on. So there's a lot of changes happening at that age that can attribute to the depression as well. So in Jungian psychology, it is actually very important to understand the age of the person that is being analyzed. But I'm digressing here. Speaking of my own, I understood that it was an enlightening thing to know because that helped me understand that these things can be overcome, because it essentially means that if this was imparted to you by your parents, then there must have been some sort of cycle. And what I came to understand later on too, I went back into my family's history and saw this cycle of psychological problems that were occurring, going on, like a repeated pattern almost. And so then not only did it help me describe my own situation, it helped me describe the historical situation that, okay, there's a pattern going on here. What is the pattern? And then I think this is because of my personality type. I'm an INTP, which means like I love seeking out patterns and frameworks. So this was a really obvious thing to me to see that if there's a pattern of repetitive behavior, is it possible to break that pattern? Is it possible to end? And then what you learn in Jungian psychology is, as well as the term generational trauma, it is possible to end the cycle. It is. And that's ultimately why I kept going deeper and deeper into Jungian psychology, because it gave me that answer. It's like, okay, it is possible to break. Now, how do I do that? And I think the most general course of action that anyone would take immediately would be to think that it's an external thing. It's an external problem that can be solved externally. Meaning, if I fix the situation, if I fix this, then the problem would be resolved. But actually, no, it's counterintuitive. The solution actually is going into yourself and fixing your own problems. Fixing your own internal situation, I suppose, is what it would amount to, which is what Jungian psychology is trying to elucidate. It's the internal framework that needs to be worked on. It's the integration of all those aspects. So that's what Jungian psychology sort of led me down. And I think one of the most important things that Jungian psychology helped in terms of resolving my depression was, I'm not saying that this is a general solution at all. This is my personal experience, and because of my personality type, it's what helped me. I really enjoy, on a very deep level, information and knowledge and understanding things. I realize that when I'm unable to understand a concept, a framework, a system, I feel really bad about it. I feel really negative. So in essence, that's what I was feeling about myself, is I didn't understand myself. I couldn't quantify myself in some regards, or I couldn't deduce myself, or dissect myself, because I didn't know how. But then Jungian psychology allowed me to do that. It really started by personality types, it through the MBTI. Now, many people don't actually know this, but the MBTI is derived off Carl Jung's typology, personality type theory. It is predicated on cognitive functions, and Myers-Briggs tried to simplify Jung's ideas by creating the MBTI, the type indicator, which we now know as the 16 personalities. So that's important, by the way. If you want to go deeper into personality types, you just need to read Carl Jung's book on personality types if you want to get a deeper understanding of where all those concepts came from. So again, Jungian psychology to the rescue. It helped me quantify myself in some regards. It, quite simply put it categorized my behavior. Like it made me understand so much about myself, even though on such a general level, there's a lot of people who consider the MBTI as like equivalent to the zodiac, but I think it's much deeper than that. So it helped me understand myself, and just doing that liberated me so much. I couldn't explain to you what that means. So I was feeling depressed, but now I have a better, even if a little, a better understanding of myself thanks to Jungian psychology, particularly typology. It helped me understand myself and understand that both that I am not different in a negative way from anyone, nor am I the same in a negative way as everyone else. I'm uniquely me, but at the same time, I do possess these qualities that help me describe certain behaviors so that I don't feel like a weirdo or an outcast or an outsider, or I'm this weird thing. You can also see in typology or personality types, there's a distribution of each personality type. There's a different proportion of each personality type, and there's a majority of one and a minority of the other. Like there are more sensation types than there are intuitive types. That helps a lot, because then it helps you understand that, okay, there's a larger amount of sensation types who see the world in a particular way versus intuitive types who see the world in a completely different way. And so naturally, we would feel a little more alone as intuitive types just because the majority of the world is comprised of sensation types. That helps a lot. It helps me understand that I'm part of this small group of people that makes me feel a little more unique or special. But at the same time, it also makes you feel like an outsider because not many people are going to be able to agree or see the way things you see, especially if you care about harmony in the group and you care about relationships and you do kind of, as a natural human tendency, want to fit in. That's part of what causes the depression too, is the feeling of isolation, feeling like there there's no one that understands what I'm going through. There's no one that understands the way I think. Knowing your personality type helps you find your people in a way. It helps you find other intuitives who think that way or other personality types that click with you, that will help you understand you're not alone and that there are other people that actually think the way you do. And it's really powerful and helpful, and you don't feel so alone anymore. But you also feel at the same time that you are unique and special and that your perspective is not crazy, that what you see in your internal world is not crazy. It's not so weird or different, that it's acceptable. You just need to find the right people to do that. And learning typology really helped me in that way, find my people, because my family, the majority of my family, actually all of my family, are sensation types. So I have a lot of experience in that regard. And that attributed a lot to my depression because I felt so different, so weird. Like I felt so strange compared to these people. Like, why are they not thinking like this? Or why are they thinking like that? Like, the intuitive is able to see future possibilities a lot better than a sensation type is, although it may not be practically grounded at times. Our prediction rate is quite high. So the sensation type may be doing a particular behavior which the intuitive type sees as complete nonsense, but in a practical way to the sensation type, it's just what has always been done. And so they're just repeating the thing that has always been done, even though it doesn't mean it's healthy or is beneficial. The just because it's always been done overrides any beneficial aspect of it, that it shouldn't be done. The intuitive can see that clearly, but the sensation type can. And since the sensation type is grounded in historical data, that it's always been done, and the majority of the group, that everyone agrees that's how it should be done because it's tradition, even though it's leading towards a self-destructive behavior, the intuitive type will just be an outcast in that regard. And I have experienced a lot of the times where it's not a positive thing, but like a lot of I told you so's in my life. And you really have to be strong willed as a person to express yourself and express your identity and be authentic, not lie, and to be truthful as you can to yourself. So when you do say something that contradicts their behavior and you are pushed outside as an outcast, then all you have to do is really just stick with it because the inevitable will come and your predictions will be true and you will be redeemed and vindicated. And that's hard, but it's necessary in my experience. The most important part, I think this is particular for my personality type, I'm not generalizing here, but the most important part is it's not an act of revenge. You don't want to do that. The vindication is satisfactory enough. If, particularly speaking, if it's your family and you love them and they didn't do anything really to hurt you intentionally, it's just because they knew less maybe. Just forgive. They know that the realization takes place and they'll see you as someone completely different once your prediction comes true. So just stick to it, but don't force it on anyone. Just stick to it silently and be patient, and your vindication, your day of redemption will come, and just be humble about it. Don't get arrogant. That causes inflation. And I've experienced that. That's why I'm trying to share this with someone who might be going through the same things. But this is what I'm talking about in terms of going back to the depression, this was all brought to light by Jungian psychology and understanding typology, understanding how different people see the world differently. And I think, particularly for me, that understanding broadened my horizons. So it's sort of like outgrowing your depression. It's actually a very narrow street. You can't see any way out. It's like tunnel vision almost. Like there's just no point to anything, if that makes any sense. To me, it does. Visually in my mind, I see just an alleyway with nothing. It's just dark, dim, gray, and meaningless. And there's no alternative route. That's what my mind sees when I see depression. But when you experience more, when you understand more, colors added into those streets, and it becomes a vibrant city, which actually occurs in dreams. So let's say in dreams you dream of that depressed alleyway, that street, and it's all gray and stuff. And then you overcome your depression, and now it's a vibrant city with an infinite amount of possibilities. That is what Jungian psychology did for me by helping me understand all these different terms, all these different concepts. It elucidated all these different layers of my psychology to help me understand and integrate those aspects. The depression can be personified, and this is really important in Jungian psychology that Carl Jung is just an incredible genius for. And as a matter of fact, I've had dreams about it too, where the depression comes as a woman dressed in black as a metaphor. And you actually do see her, or I have seen her in dreams, a woman dressed in black. So I had a feeling of depression. The woman came dressed in black. And what that does is just immense. It helps you personify her. And then what you can do then is then separate that part from yourself. Understand that depression is real, that you can take her seriously, let her come in, have a seat with her, offer her a drink, and speak to her. See what she wants, see what she is lacking, see what's causing her to feel that way. And you're doing this all within your internal work, by the way. That's a process of active imagination. And it's so powerful because then you can really understand, okay, my depression is caused because maybe I have been isolating too much. I've been way too introverted that my extroverted functions can't take place. Like one really good solution for an INTP who's stuck in a loop, TISI loop, which is the thinking and introverted sensation loop, which causes us to overanalyze and reflect about historical mistakes, is to utilize our extroverted function, mainly our extroverted intuitive function, which is responsible for seeing the infinite possibilities of the world. So you could say that I've been way too much in my head, and all she wants is to go for a walk. So something as simple as going for a walk. And I did that. So I went for a walk. I went out to a forest and I went for walks for hours, and I felt much better. And she got up and left. That is really my experience with it. That is my experience with my depression, and I really try to elucidate this on my channel, but analyzing your dreams really does help you do that. If you're feeling depressed one day and she appears in your dreams as this woman dressed in black, and you sort of see what the scenery is like and the dialogue, you could dissect that part of you, understand it, and once you understand it, you can find a solution for it. The dreams usually help in that regard. It'll provide you a solution as to what to do with that situation. And I have been able to do that with family members, clients, friends, to help them resolve that aspect of the question about it. So that is one very small aspect of how Jungian psychology has helped me help resolve the depression is through understanding and understanding my life's story and giving meaning back. It brought me meaning back because this goes on a whole different other level. But once you start integrating these earlier layers of your psychology, like your persona, your ego, your shadow, and your anima or animus, what it does, you're going to eventually hit on your totality or the self, which will appear in dreams as a total image, like a mandala or something like that. And then you'll realize that is the guiding factor of your life. And it's crazy. I could go into very deep concepts here. But what that shows you is that nothing in your life is an accident. that you are somehow driven by this unconscious factor, which is the self, which is of greater intelligence than the ego, and it has been directing your life all this time. That explains a lot, because then it could say that one of the reasons why your father was so depressed is because the self was trying to awaken him, in a sense. I don't mean like in a religious sense. I mean more like about his other aspects of his life. It was trying to awaken him, and he kept running from it and couldn't integrate those aspects of himself. You could say that the unintegrated part, or the unlived part of himself, finally caught up with him, and you couldn't handle that occurrence. And like I said, he died around middle age. So that's really important for you to understand that there are parts of our physiology and psychology that will happen regardless. So you need to understand that there are parts of yourself that need to be worked on in order to remain healthy psychologically, just as exercise, eating healthy, eating right will prolong your life. You need to do certain things for your psychology as well in order to remain healthy. And that's what Jungian psychology does teach. It's like psychological hygiene at that point. And a lot of people who may feel in a negative state psychologically are psychologically unhygienic, because they don't know, first of all, and they haven't done any work to maintain their psychology, just as someone who is physically unhealthy does not do anything to maintain their physiology. Like we do certain things like eating healthy, going to the gym, working out, building muscle. Those are all things you do for your body, yet we completely neglect the mind. We think everything can be done materially or in terms of physically, but nothing is considered in terms of the psychological framework. Like, you have to do some psychological work as well in order to remain psychologically healthy, to maintain a good psychological balance. And it really is about balance, psychologically speaking. So I am not middle aged yet. So again, none of this will hold true until I surpass the age of my father when he passed away. So it remains to be seen. But I can say that, knock on wood, I do feel like there's a sense of meaning. I do feel like some cycle has been broken, and I've seen it in my family that I've worked on. It's just incredible. I'm trying not to overemphasize here, because there's a compensation that goes on. This is really useful, by the way, on a side note, but I don't want to exaggerate anything or present myself to be something I'm not on camera, because there will be a compensation that occurs. So if you see someone who is overly polite on camera, or overly excited, overly enthusiastic, just remember there's a compensation that will occur, like a seesaw. So behind the scenes, they're probably very miserable or very depressed or something like that. So I'm not trying to like sell you the idea that Jungian psychology is going to make you blissful 24/7 or completely happy all the time. That's not at all what Jungian psychology is aimed at. If anything, the only thing that's guaranteed in learning psychology is suffering. But there's liberation after that suffering. You have to walk through your own hell in order to get to the other side. There's no other way around it. But that's just proof that this isn't like a quick course to $1 million. You know what I mean? The work is part of the process. It is an essential part of the process that you need to go through if you want to get to the other side, to be liberated, to be whole. That's the only way around it, and there's no quick fix. And if you're looking for a quick fix, they're trying to sell you something. It's an unfortunate, and I get caught up too. Like, I, I really want to help in a way that is not like a crutch, like you will need me, but to pass on the information that I've learned that has helped me, to help other people who may be struggling in a similar situation, that can explain a lot to them. Like, if you help them explain, like, your depression is not solely your own. You got some from your parents, and a lot of it has to do with your external situation might not be the right fit for you, and maybe you could change that, or maybe you can't. But it explains a lot and helps them understand that they're not alone. And depression, like I said, is like a narrow street. It really feels like you're alone in this world and no one will understand you, what you're going through. It has helped me, and that's what I'm trying to elucidate here, is that you may not be able to fix your problem, which is what Jungian psychology teaches. You may not be able to fix your problem, but you can definitely outgrow it. Your problems will become so small, you're not even going to realize them anymore. You're not even going to notice them anymore, and you'll be free of them. You'll outgrow them. So that's all I have for today. If you're really interested in learning more or getting started in Jungian psychology and learning what I have learned, I've integrated it all in my application that you can download on the Play Store and or App Store. And it covers all the topics that I have spoken about. It teaches you about your dreams, which really help you elucidate the unconscious factors of yourself. If you want to become whole, dreams will get you there. And this is not, I'm not trying to be a salesman or anything like that. It really does help. The other thing too, again, like the importance of typology really helps you understand your place in the world. It did for me. And it also covers concepts in analytical psychology, which is really important for men and women to understand. For the men, their anima, and for women, their animas. And it has all those topics all condensed into one little app that you can have in your pocket. So if you want to get started and learn what I had learned, it's all there. There's all over 200 symbols with interpretations. So if you have like this symbol in your dream that you can't quite grasp, you could go on the app and look for that symbol if it's available. There's just too many symbols. I couldn't possibly include all of them, but I did my best to include some of the main ones that do appear, and it'll help you understand, maybe in the archetypal or collective sense, what that symbol may possibly mean. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching.